Good morning. It's the day after I put up the video about the filter and the fitting and all that stuff, and I was rewatching that before I hit the upload button. I put it up anyway, and I realized how stupid that sounded. So you know what? We're pulling the tank out. It's really not that hard. So I assessed under here, aside from the undercoating, it's actually not nearly as bad as I thought. The tank feels pretty solid. So I'm just going to unhook that, yank it out through that grommet there. I've got, only thing holding it in up here is all the Phillips screws, which I've got out, and the cinder, which I unhooked, and it sounds like we're dribbling there. So yeah, I'm a little unsure if I'm going to try like vinegar or electrolysis or something to like really clean the tank. I'm going to start by just dumping all the crap out and seeing what it looks like. So yeah, that's what we're doing. All right, well, it's out. I don't know what I was so worried about. There is a metric ton of undercoating that I had to chip away, especially around in here, to get it to release. And unfortunately, I kind of figured it would. The grommet tore, but that's okay. I'll put it back together and maybe, put some RTV on there. Yeah, tank's out. So now let's take a look inside and see how bad it is. So I've been sloshing the tank out with water. Look at all this. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Ah, God. This fucking thing just came out. It's a glob of solder from where they soldered the fill neck on and the tank together. I bet that has been floating around and plugging up the feed fitting and shit. I mean, in addition to like all that. But man, that was actually right in the area where the pickup tube is. So much better. A little bit hard to see, but oh, that's hot. We're looking way better than we did. You can see that's just water over there that has yet to dry out. But yeah, overall, much better than we were. We made it over Cowee for the first time. Cleaning the tank out of like 10 pounds of rust flakes. Who knows? That's what it took to get this thing reliable. Speedometer reads about 30 miles an hour fast, but man, God, that's a good feeling. I've been fighting that for 2 weeks. This is kind of cool. Passing the electric Polestar, which is sort of a Volvo, in the old Amazon. Anyway, so that's done. Put it all back together, hit the road, and it died again. And I was pissed. I was mad. And I pulled over. Actually, it stalled. That's what it was. It stalled at the post office in town, and had to call my buddy Gordon, who actually went with me to pick the car up. He came, took me back to work. I'm sitting there just fuming mad the rest of the day, right? Drive home, past the post office on the way, think, oh, well, I'll just try and start it, see what happens. Fires right up. Okay, weird. So I'm thinking at this point, like, it's got to be heat related, right? Because I drove it from work to the machine shop, which is right across the street from the post office. I saw somebody pull into the post office in a 66 Volkswagen bus. And I figured, oh, I'll loop in there and get a picture with them, talk to him for a minute. It sat for a little while, kind of heat soaking at the machine shop. Then it sat across the street, sort of heat soaking at the post office, and then it wouldn't restart. Same symptom as always. Could not get any fuel to pump out of the pump into the carbs. But anyway, so I went back to the post office once it cooled down, once it got off work, fired right up, drove it home, it was fine. So I get home, and I'm looking at it, and as it's running, I'm seeing those air bubbles in the post pump filter again. I'm like, well, it can't be an air brake in the pickup tube. It can't be an air brake in the hard line that runs under the car. What is going on? And then I look down, and hang on, let me get it. So then I look down and I see this filter, which is what I have. The tank is this way, the mechanical fuel pump is over here, right? And I notice that it's like maybe a third of the way full. And I can't see any fuel coming in here, and I can't see it going out through the filter, but I can see that it's only like a third of the way full. And then I realize this thing is mounted horizontally, which means it's always going to have air in it. And after a while, once the car gets good and hot, that air expands. And I don't know if it creates enough pressure that it can't pull fuel from the pump or what. But the mechanical pump up here is like, it's not, it is a pump, sure, but it's not a pump in like the electric pump way where it can provide like a lot of suction, and like, it's not a vane pump. It's just a little like pitot valve essentially. So it's trying to pull this giant air bubble out. It just can't do it. And after a while, what happens is the car cools down, that air, it shrinks down a little bit again, and then it just kind of burps the air out, and it'll run fine for a little bit. So I just took this filter off. And ever since I got rid of that filter, it's been just flawless. Absolutely flawless. The farthest I've driven it, I drove it over to Murphy for work one day. Actually passed Dave's shop, stopped in and chatted with him a little bit. I did clog up the post pump filter on the way there, but I had another in the car. I just threw it right in. And honestly, ever since I changed that out, it really hasn't gotten any more crap in it. That was the post pump filter I'd been using this whole time. So all the trash that had been sucking out of the tank had been getting by the previous filter, and I ran it without the pre-filter for a little bit. It was all getting caught by this secondary filter. So yeah, swapped that out, and it has been just mint ever since. I also had this issue where I'd hit a bump, or I'd be going down the road, I'd hear all this clunking and just a bunch of rattling from the back, even after doing the bushings. And I convinced myself that, oh, it's like the bumper rattling around, or maybe it's gear lash in the diff or something, and kind of put it out of my mind. But it was loud. And the more I heard it, I was like, that's like metal on metal clunking. I was like, it sounds like, after a couple of days, I was like, it sounds like I forgot to tighten something after doing the bushings. And so it was also acceleration and braking related. Like I'd go to accelerate and it would go clunk, 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 clunk as I shifted, right? So something's moving around in the rear end. And it turned out, I did not tighten down the bolts for the torque rods. So at least I found that within the first couple hundred miles. I didn't continue to ignore it, but I tightened those up, and man, it's so smooth. It runs so good. The other day I was sitting in the shop and it was, I don't know, 70 degrees down here. No choke, no nothing. Just first time I hit the key, had been sitting for, 36 hours. First time I hit the key, fire right up, idle beautifully. This thing drives really well. It steers really well now. The next thing I did, it uses like a pressure switch in a brake T to turn the brake lights on. And a lot of older cars do that. And the problem is that it needs to build some pressure in the brake system first before to activate that switch. And as those switches get old, it takes more and more pressure to activate them. They get corroded. So I was having to like slam on the, well, not slam, but press like halfway down on the brake pedal before the lights would come on, which is not good. So I fabricated a really simple little kind of L bracket of aluminum and just used a not universal, but like some random $2 Hyundai brake light switch for a pedal, and just relocated all that inside. So now, like, if I touch the pedal and just take it off of the stop, then the brake lights turn on right away. Also put some really freaking bright LEDs in the brake light housings. That helped out quite a bit, because I had the old halogen or incandescent, whatever, bulbs in there. They worked okay. Went to Walmart and got, because I was in a hurry, and got the LED bulbs they had. Those didn't work very well, because the LEDs actually fire backwards and kind of try and reflect out. And the reflectors in this car are 60 years old. So that didn't work very well. What I wound up doing, I actually have some aluminum. Do I have any in here still? Yeah. Some of this aluminum HVAC tape. I just kind of cut around and got just the shiny part. It's got a really good adhesive on it. It'll stick to anything. And I just use that to line the housing of the reflector to get some more light going out, rearward. That worked pretty well. What else have we done? Oh, the horns. I've actually been working on the horns today. So my issue was the horns themselves are no good. I'm going to throw on a pair of, actually I might just throw an Uga horn on from Harbor Freight. They're like $20. But the horn ring had, like you could push the horn ring, but it wouldn't do anything, right? And turns out inside, and I don't think I took pictures, I wish I had. Inside the horn ring, like inside the steering wheel, there's two metal discs, right? One is grounded, this side's grounded to the horn ring and like grounded to the steering wheel. This one is connected to a wire that goes all the way down through the steering shaft and out the steering box and provides the ground path for the horns. So the problem is, it had this foam inside, it acted as like a spring, and of course at 6 years old, the foam fell apart, and the contacts just like, they were together all the time, and it was constantly grounding. So I had some of this stuff, this like, you know, work mat type stuff, actually has a nice firm closed cell foam, and I cut some of that out and put it in the horn contact ring and button it all back up, and I have a working horn contact ring. I was still not getting ground between, like I would hook the meter on one end, I'd hook it to the ground wire at the horn, and on the other end I'd hook it to the horn ring. And even though I could feel the horn, like the plates coming together and contacting, I wasn't getting a ground path. And the reason for that, I guess probably 30 years ago or whenever this foam failed, there should be a little jumper between the two halves of the steering shaft, because the steering shaft is connected with like this, I really should replace it, but it's like a reinforced rubber fiber disc. And that actually provides electrical insulation between the two halves. And I remember on my last Amazon, I remember seeing a little jumper wire that went around and connected those two shafts together. And after 30 minutes of troubleshooting, I finally was looking, and I was trying to get continuity between like the steering wheel and the steering shaft. And then I realized, like, oh, I can get continuity on the upper half of the steering shaft, but not on the lower half. And then the rest of it grounds through the gears and stuff in the steering. So yeah, the lower shaft has 2 bolts horizontal, the upper shaft has 2 bolts vertical, but these metal plates don't touch that there, so there's no continuity between those two. I added that little jumper and it works now. So I just took a couple of those bolts out, maybe a little jumper wire, put it back together. We got ground now. Horn should work as soon as I put like a good working horn on it. And let's see if this thing works. All right, I love it. Yeah, this thing is like dangerously close to being a real car. It doesn't even really make any, once I've tightened the bolts for the torque rods, it doesn't even really make any bad noises going down the road anymore. Like there's a moderate amount of whine and kind of like gear whine from the rear end, but you know, it's old, you're gonna have that, it's fine. I feel like there were a couple other things that I did. Oh, the tail light wiring and everything. That stumped me for like a day, because there's the switch itself, it wound up being like 3 different things, right? So I could pull the headlight switch out, the headlights would work, the turn signals and everything would work, my parking lights and my tail lights didn't work. So I troubleshot a little bit, I didn't have voltage like at those sockets, and I was like, well, maybe the switch is corroded. Luckily, the switch is serviceable, it's super easy to take out, there's a little tubular rivet you drill out. Ron Quaz at Swedish Embassy has this great write-up. You can just search for like Volvo Amazon headlight switch tips or something like that, and it'll bring up his page, he shows everything. So I took that all apart, and I had a couple issues with the headlight switch itself, because there's like a terminal that, there's a male spade terminal that is then crimped to like a large post that then goes to the inner body of the switch. And there's no solder or anything on it, it just relies on, you know, a crimp and a clamp to get that continuity. And I couldn't get continuity from the outside female spade terminal of the switch to the tab on the inside. So I wound up having to put some solder on there. That helped. Also had a couple of spring, because it's like these spring fingers that kind of mush in on a central square rod that goes up and down. Again, just look at his site, it explains everything. I had to tweak some of those to get good spring pressure on the contacts, and I got the switch all fixed, and like I got continuity and everything at all the pins that I expected it, you know, to do. So I put it back in the car exactly the way it came out, and I was still having the same problem. I would turn the headlights on, the headlights would work, I would get no instrument panel lighting, get no tail lights, get no parking lights. And I'm sitting here scratching my head like, what in the world is going on? And then I realized that I also didn't, because you can twist the knob to dim it. and I couldn't dim the instrument panel lights. And then I troubleshot it a bit more and realized that someone at some point had hooked the wire for the tail lights up to the wire for the instrument panel lights and vice versa. And I forget, there was something wrong with the parking light connector also. Anyway, I fixed all that, put all that stuff on the right terminals, and boom, everything just started to work. So that's great. But yeah, that took probably 4 hours to troubleshoot and understand what was going on. So take that as a lesson. Just because you put something together the same way it came apart doesn't mean that it was put together correctly in the first place. Yeah, that's about it. It is Sunday, April 21st. I'm going to leave for Kyle's on Thursday the 25th, I guess. Well, whatever this Thursday is, I'm leaving in the morning, meet my buddy Nick, and we're going to take the back roads all the way up to Hurdle Mills. Funny enough, I had to go to Mebane, which is like 30 minutes from Hurdle Mills last week for work. Yeah, I actually met up with Kyle and had dinner with him. Drove the 240 all that way. I should do a video on the 240. Kyle did a really, really cool kind of short video on my V8 Swap 240 2 years ago, year and a half ago. But I've never really done, sort of the story behind the car and how it wound up with me and everything I've done to it over the years. It'd be a good one to do. But yeah, air filters. I lucked up, and hang on. So, mutual friend of mine, Chris Presby, had, it's for sale, but it was kind of a parts car, Amazon, and he had a pair of these, really hard to see, there we go. They've got the Volvo stamp in them, they were on the car. I gave him some random old Napa filters to throw on it. The car doesn't run, but he needed something. They're definitely old, they're definitely used, but they're not super dirty, so I'm just going to run them as is for now. What I plan to do in the future is to either cut this open here or throw it in the oven and try and melt whatever adhesive is holding this, because it's not welded, it's like glued together. And I want to put in like replaceable elements. This is some random old used air filter. But yeah, I want to be able to separate this and replace the element, because you can get air filters for these things. They're about, I think it's $70 a piece. It's stupid. Plus they're blue or they're chrome. They're ugly. They don't have the Volvo stamp on them. And I'm a nerd. I need the Volvo stamp. So yeah, I'm going to try and make these serviceable. They're very similar to these, which I have, which are actually new old stock. Problem is, these are for a B16. These are for the SU HS4 carbs. These are for the SU HS6. And my initial plan was actually to modify these, but I almost felt bad about it, because how many new old stock B16 HS4 air filters are left? Anyway, if you need these or you want to buy them, let me know. I'll sell them cheap. But yeah, the whole spacing is different. That's smaller, but I was just going to cut it open, widen the holes. They're the same overall diameter. But I was basically going to use the back plate off of, some old Napa filters I have, and then just modify the front plate by widening these bolt holes out a little bit. But, I do have 2 of these. So if you need them, let me know. Yeah, that's it. We're just about done. Confidence in the car is skyrocketing, stonks. I have a really fun time driving the car. I cannot be mad when I'm driving this thing, even when it breaks. Like, I'm like, oh, damn. I'm not actually mad. I don't know, there's something about it that really just puts a smile on your face. So anyway, I'm going to stop yapping now. Hopefully I can cut this into like a coherent video. I'm going to go get probably a Harbor Freight Flugelhorn and throw it on the car and make some noise. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. This has been a real fun project, and I'll continue to mess with it some. Like I said, I have plans, in my mind, not financially, to put a bored out B20 in it with a pair of Webers and clean up the engine bay and do all kinds of kind of fun stuff with it. But yeah, that's where we're at. But thanks for checking us out. Thanks for sticking around. Appreciate y'all. Get out in the garage and fix something. Check out Dean's channel. Check out Kyle's channel. There's a few others as well. But yeah, it's been a ride so far. Next time you see me will probably be towards the end of this week or early next. Hopefully with a little kind of compilation video of the road trip out to Kyle's and just good time hanging out and uneventful trip back. So fingers crossed.